Hello, how you doing and welcome back to the channel. How good is the All Blacks squad? The team for the Rugby Championship, the overall squad for the Rugby Championship was now named kind of 10, 11 days ago. But I'm going to be speaking about that question in this video. How good is this squad? On paper, what do we think they could achieve in the Rugby Championship? And then also, obviously, in this year, looking ahead to the World Cup as well. So make sure you drop a comment down below. What do you make of the selections? Some very, very solid. Some others which I think will be more bones of contention amongst All Black fans. So you can let me know in the comment section down below. Like the video and subscribe to the channel as well. But let's get into it. So it's been a little while since I posted a video, over a week now, because I was away. I was up in Scotland, but I'm back and I was trying to think about what to talk about. And I haven't done anything on the All Blacks squad yet. As I said, it was named well over a week ago now, so I'm not going to be going through it in a huge amount of detail. I will go through various positions and bits that I think is interesting, but it's not going to be a kind of squad reaction video in the way it would be if the team had just been announced. But I thought I'd frame it with this question of how good is this All Blacks team? Because I think it's quite an interesting one, because I look at a number of positions in this squad and you think it's packed full of quality, it's experience, there's guys that have won at a domestic level, they've won regularly with the All Blacks as well. But then there's also other positions where I still think New Zealand haven't quite got the quality that they maybe once did. And then you've got the coaching of Ian Foster as well. And plenty of All Blacks fans not happy with him, obviously departing after the Rugby World Cup. So there's all these different things happening. And how good this All Blacks squad are and how good they could be, I think is a fascinating topic. Because I still think they potentially have a chance of winning in France. You'd say they're a bit of an outside chance. Ireland and France may be the favourites at the moment. South Africa are there in terms of the squad. I think you look at South Africa's overall squad on paper and it looks really, really strong. How good can they be in France later this year and in the Rugby Championship? So how good are the All Blacks? Now, the first thing that I actually wanted to mention about this was the Rugby Championship itself, because the nature of the Rugby Championship in a World Cup year is always really, really fascinating, because it's happening so close to the start of the tournament that how do you approach that? And Ian Foster in his press conference, and in fact I think in the article I looked at on the All Blacks website, there were quotes to do with that exact thing, where he was saying, obviously, the Rugby Championship is crucial preparation for the World Cup later this year. And I think all the coaches in the Rugby Championship would agree with that. But I think the degree at which they're really focusing and gunning to win the Rugby Championship, I think, will vary. Jacques Nienaber, for example, has spoken about it and has said, obviously, they want to win the Rugby Championship, but they've also got an eye on France later this year as well. So balancing those two things will be intriguing, because you look at the Six Nations this year, for example, and whilst obviously everything does play out in the context of the World Cup, you look at Ireland winning a Grand Slam and how well they're playing, and all of a sudden that gets spoken about as, look at how well Ireland are playing, can they win the World Cup? So there's always the World Cup on the periphery, but just the nature of the Six Nations happening earlier in the years, I think it can almost stand alone more as its own competition, whereas with the Rugby Championship, I feel so much more of the context is going to be focused on the World Cup. So that's just something that will be interesting to see. In terms of squad selections, whether we see a lot of rotation, whether we just see the strongest teams and sides really aiming to win it, let's wait and see. But let's get into some of the selections for the All Blacks and how good is this All Blacks side. As I've said already in the video, there's some very good selections and there's some which might raise a few eyebrows. Let's start off with the props. I'll put the different positions up on screen, just taking a couple of screenshots. But in terms of the props, the two most experienced guys there in terms of Nepo and Offa, I think I've seen a few fans maybe not too happy with. And even though they're the more experienced guys, those I think at this moment in time are those the players that would line up in a World Cup quarter-final or a big group stage match during France. Whether there's the depth there, whether people are happy with the choices at prop at the moment, I'm not so sure for the All Blacks. Debut in there as well for Tam-Iti Williams, and Fletcher Newell as well, who hasn't played for ages. So I look at maybe the props and just not quite as certain, maybe not quite as much strength there as New Zealand would like at this moment in time. And as I say, I have seen quite a few people voicing some level of frustration at the selections from Foster and from that coaching group. In contrast, I think, to the props, where perhaps there's an element of uncertainty, is the second row, where you look at the first three guys there, the first three names on the team sheet, really, if you're looking at second row depth, Brodie Retallick, Sam Whitelock, Scott Barrett. It's just a position of strength, isn't it? All of those, got two of those guys with 100 caps plus, Scott Barrett with 58. Yeah, I just think the second row is an area for New Zealand that they don't have to worry about. And you look at that unit, and I'd feel pretty comfortable with that if I was an All Blacks fan, but you can let me know down below. I then wanted to move on to scrum half. TJ Perenara is injured at the moment, so realistically it's going to be Aaron Smith and then Cam Roigard making his debut potentially as well. I've heard him described as almost the combination of Aaron Smith and Finlay Christie, almost the player in between those two, can do both things in terms of providing a quick platform and impetus and also having more of that tactical side of the game. So see how much of an opportunity he gets. He clearly looks like maybe the next cab off the rank really in terms of the scrum half position. You look at Aaron Smith at 34, 114 caps, probably his last World Cup, you would imagine. But then after him, obviously TJ Perenara might come back in, but could Cam Roigard be the next in line, if you like, at scrum half for the All Blacks? And then the centres, I thought, was another interesting area, because in terms of the more experienced players there, you've got Anton Leonard-Brown, Geordie Barrett and Rieko Ioane. Some changes elsewhere, though. I feel like the centres for New Zealand has been shifting around quite a lot, really. I'm not sure they necessarily have quite the stability there that they certainly once did. And I think that's maybe also been a reflection of how we haven't seen the All Blacks as dominant as they once were. That midfield isn't as strong as it once was. And I have seen quite a few fans, again, just going back to kind of trying to get a gauge on the feeling of the fans who have their frustration maybe in those centres and in the back line more generally in certain positions. I think it's interesting to see what they go for, whether they want to go for a more traditional kind of centre partnership or more of a distributing options. I think the centres could be key for New Zealand on how successful a year they have, of what sort of combinations and what sort of form they're able to get guys into. And then the final position that I want to mention, I haven't covered everything here, but that's Caleb Clarke, because that does seem to be something that the fans aren't too happy with at the moment, that Caleb Clarke is still getting in. He had that brilliant game. Was it against, someone might pick me up on this, was it against Australia in Wellington when he scored like 4 tries? Where he was absolutely brilliant, made a huge impact, and some people suggesting that he's still living off the reputation of that game and he hasn't done enough to be warranted a place in the squad at this moment in time. Sean Stevenson is there as injury cover, a lot of people suggesting that he should be named in place rather than Caleb Clarke. So I think the point really, and those were just a few examples, my view in this video is New Zealand have some huge areas of strength. They are one of the 4 best teams in the world for a reason, but are there a couple of areas that are concerns for the All Blacks and concerned for those fans about what they can achieve this year in the Rugby Championship and looking further afield to the World Cup? It's actually why I'm so interested for the Rugby Championship to get underway in a week or so's time, because you look at New Zealand and we know how good they are and the talent they have available to them, but realistically, fans not too happy with the coaching group. What can they achieve later this year? How good can they be? I feel like we're still not certain. We know they're not as good as what they once were, but they've gone from being virtually the most dominant sporting team on the planet. They're always going to have a little dip off. They're still very, very good. You've got the Springboks, who, as I mentioned already in the video, I think on paper, you look at their squad and it is arguably the strongest in world rugby. It's certainly, you could put it up against France, against Ireland, against the All Blacks, against any other team really. And it looks very, very good. How well can they play? And then obviously Australia under Eddie Jones, who we've seen him come in before and have a big impact very, very quickly. And Argentina, who had a really good finish to the year as well, particularly that victory at Twickenham. So I'm really intrigued by the Rugby Championship to see what these sides, what sort of form they're in and what we can start to suspect and see with them looking ahead to the World Cup later this year. That's enough from me. It's good to be back. General thoughts on the All Blacks. How good is this All Blacks squad? I guess TBC, ultimately. They've got a huge amount of potential, but there are some big areas for them to fix. Drop a comment down below, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.